I think we are going to skip our Hebrews reading today and go straight to our Luke reading. And so if you feel inclined to do homework, Hebrews 12:18 through 29, you might read at home, but we're not going to read it here today. Our gospel reading is taken from the gospel according to Luke chapter 13 and verses 10 through 17. Listen to what the Spirit might speak into your life in this reading from the gospel according to Luke chapter 13 at verse 10. Now Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowds, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, but not on the Sabbath." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie their ox or their donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? Ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from her bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all of his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that he was doing. Holy wisdom, holy word. Thanks be to God. It's easy to whisk right through these miracle stories in the Gospels. They all kind of sound a little bit alike, and there's just so many of them that it's easy to, brush past them and not see their uniqueness. This one is slightly different, though, if you take a close look. It says, "And just then there appeared a woman," she just appeared, "with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and quite unable to stand up straight. And when Jesus saw her, he called her and said, 'Woman, you are set free.'" I've heard this story all my life. You probably have too. It's never really spoken to me very much because, like I said, it's just another miracle story. And there's a lot of them. I've always just kind of brushed past it en route to other things. That's maybe evidence for how rich the scriptures are. It's like driving past the same house or tree or pond almost every day for years, and finally just noticing it. We do that, don't we? Isn't it peculiar how Luke claims that this woman was crippled by a spirit? Almost as if she was bent over double not by osteoporosis, but by sadness or loneliness or fear. And how is it that she does not come to Jesus asking to be healed? He has to call her. No one is crying out for her healing on her behalf, least of all herself. She's just a woman in the crowd on a Sabbath day. She doesn't call out to Jesus. It is he who calls out to her. And she has lived like this for 18 years. 18. Often when you see a number in the Bible, you look for the numerology of it, the symbolic significance. 18, what have you got? 18 isn't a magic number. It's not 7 or 9 or 12 or 40 or 13. It's just a number. 18 is just a really long time to live with your face to the ground. 18 is a really long time to bear your physical or emotional burden. 18 years is long enough to just get used to whatever's hurting you. 18 years is long enough to give up hope of ever seeing an end to your suffering. 18 years of illness is enough to make you forget that you're even ill. Adaptation is survival, they say, especially for those whose pain will not mend. She has been bent over for so long that she has resigned herself to her ailment, and she doesn't even ask to be helped. She's accustomed to the social alienation of not being able to look people in the eye. She's forgotten that there are other ways to be. And that is true of us too. Sometimes when you live with something that's wrong long enough, you forget that it's wrong. When you live with something that's broken or hurting long enough, you forget that there's any other way to live your life, any other way to be, other than broken and hurting and outside human contact and human society. What are some things that you and I have gotten accustomed to over the course of 18 years? And I use 18 because that's the number in the story. 18 years ago, it was 2007. How has your life changed since 2007? I finally got ordained in 2007, so my life has changed pretty substantially, even though I had worked for the church for 12 years prior to that. I've gotten used to being a pastor, weaving my life around the church seasons, structuring each week around the one goal of being ready for Sunday. Never getting weekends free until that wonderful pandemic. It was nice. I've gotten used to some harder things too, like standing in the pulpit and talking, which used to scare me silly. 18 years ago, I was a bundle of nerves on a Sunday morning. Now I'm pretty calm. Over the course of 18 years, I've gotten used to being a dad. Though that has changed with all the phases, every one of those phases has been a joy, not an unmitigated joy, but a joy. It's a joy. What was your life like in 2007? What have you gotten used to since then? The first iPhone came out in 2007, and it felt like a passing fad, didn't it? And now you have to have a doctor's excuse to live without one. And it probably travels with you even to, no, you don't really. You don't literally. That was humor. You probably even travel to the bathroom with it. We've gotten quite used to having one little device in our pocket that serves as our phone and our answering machine and our camera and our radio and our talking road atlas and our calculator and our calendar and our alarm clock and our photo album and our encyclopedia. I would guess that you got more Christmas cards in December of 2007 than you've gotten in the last 5 years put together. What happened? Why aren't we sending each other Christmas cards anymore? Maybe we're sending Christmas texts. Maybe we're saying Merry Christmas on social media. Card stores, stationery shops have kind of gone the way of all flesh, and we've gotten used to it. In 2007, marijuana was still illegal pretty much everywhere. And now there are certain places you can't go, like a Red Roof Inn, without it smelling, the way we used to smell cigarette smoke everywhere. Gay marriage was still a huge debate in 2007. Can you believe it? And then by 2014, everybody was like, who cares? Let's stop fighting. But in 2007, it was still illegal. Most of us have come up with better things to fight about since then. In 2007, we had the Virginia Tech shooting. 2007. And since then, we've had so many. I mean, do you remember what a big deal that was? It was all we could think about or talk about for days. Now there's another mass shooting. We kind of, shrug our heads and go back to our iPhones. We've grown numb to things that we should not have grown numb to. I had to look this up, but I found that during the presidential debates of November 2007, everybody played so nice and so fair. You had Barack Obama debating Hillary Clinton. You had John McCain debating Mitt Romney for their party's nomination. And they spoke to and about each other with such respect. It was a cold respect, maybe, but at least it was respect. I would take it compared to today's discourse. I think over the course of 18 years, we've come to expect our politicians to rant and call each other names. In today's climate, you might be called weak if you spoke respectfully to somebody across the aisle. 2007 brought us the Great Recession, and now we all just take it for granted. A house will cost you $250,000 to $500,000. That's just the way of the world now. And a pound of hamburger will be $11. We endure it. We go to work, we come home, we collapse into our favorite chair, and we live our lives with the hopes that somebody with more power and influence will fix it someday. We get used to stuff. What have you gotten used to over the course of the past 18 years or fewer? What things in your own life have you gotten used to? We get used to stuff that goes with growing older. At least some of us do. Though truly, I'm always forgetting that I'm not in my 20s anymore and speaking to people who are in their 20s as if we're like the same age and offending them with my familiarity and probably my 90s way of talking. What unwanted facts, what states of being have installed themselves into our lives? What have we gotten used to? What have you gotten used to? We've all learned to live with the absences of somebody we loved, and perhaps declining physical health, maybe even declining memories and cognitive abilities, changing finances. On the bright side, we've gotten used to some pretty great blessings too, and we've started to take them for granted, just like everything else. We get used to those just as readily. We can get used to most things with time. It's a survival mechanism, probably. And yet it can hurt us too. I hate this image, and I've been hearing it all my life, but you've heard of the frog in the boiling pot. Yeah. If it's in the pot, from the beginning when the water's still cold, it can't feel the gradual change in temperature, and it doesn't know to hop out. Sorry, I know that's a horrible image. But life changes by degrees. Happiness doesn't usually come overnight. It comes by degrees, and it can leave us by degrees. Most things come by degrees. Sometimes we need healing from things that we have gotten so used to that we don't even know we need it anymore. That's what is happening with this woman in the synagogue where Jesus is teaching on the Sabbath. She's just another person in the crowd. She did not come seeking healing. She just came to be part of the congregation. She asks nothing of Jesus, even though his reputation as a healer is pretty well established by this point. All she asks is to be part of the people of God on a Sabbath morning. 18 years of staring at the ground, craning her neck probably to look anyone in the eye. 18 years of never being able to look up at the sun or the moon or the stars. She's gotten used to it. And no one is saying, hey, Jesus, look over here. There's someone over here that needs your help, and she's not saying, hey, can you help me? Because she's gotten used to it. But Jesus sees her. He sees the sufferer, and he sees what she no longer sees. And he calls her over and says, woman, not your faith has made you well. Just you are set free. Very often before these healings, he'll say, your faith has made you well, or your faith has set you free. Here, he does it without any ask, and maybe without any faith. Sometimes we need healing in the places where we have forgotten that we are broken. And I would ask you to search your life for places where you may have forgotten that it's not okay where you are. Maybe you need healing. And we as a society have forgotten that this is not right and not normal where we are. And we too need healing. Sometimes we grow so used to a thing that we forgot that there's another way to be. I look at the healings in the Gospels, and there are just so many of them. You mainly find that Jesus heals people, though, of things that make them outsiders. Lepers, blind people, lame people, bleeders. They were cut off from society by their ailments. This poor woman couldn't look anybody in the eye. And all of them were marginal in a world where you had to carry your own weight, usually by way of physical labor. You know, the miracle stories of Jesus are parables of including people back into the community. He drew people back into the sacred community. That's how you and I can participate in the healing ministry of Jesus. Of course, we can't touch somebody and heal their diseases, but we can participate by re-including people who can't believe that they could ever be included. Okay, since I'm back to telling jokes, here's my joke for this week. A Scotsman phones in sick from work, and his boss asks him, "What's the matter, Angus?" Angus replies, "I have a wee cough." The boss responds, "You have a wee cough?" Angus says, "Thank you, boss. I was only going to ask for a day." And that has nothing to do with the sermon. What deep hurt, what old ill? What brokenness would Jesus see if he looked at our society today? The stuff that we have gotten so used to that we just don't even see it anymore. What things ought to be shocking us into action, except that we become so accustomed to them? And what is there in our own lives, maybe, that we could address, that we could ask for help with, that we could actually seek healing for, but we're not doing it because we've gotten used to things the way they are, and maybe even comfortable with things the way they are. Many people in our lives are walking around stooped, bent, broken over, broken down in ways that they don't even much notice anymore. Shouldn't that be exactly where the church is stationed, keeping her watch, calling individuals to wholeness and society to health? Our society is so caught up in these cycles of anger and disrespect. But I have rarely met a person who did not respond well to being treated with kindness and respect. Have you really? I mean, I have failed to offer it quite frequently, frankly. I have often failed to offer people the kindness and respect that I should have. But whenever I have treated a person with kindness and honor that is due to a human being created in God's image, that person has usually responded not with anger or sarcasm or apathy, but like a person due, worthy of respect. Even and maybe especially those people who are not used to being treated well. The homeless, the mentally ill, the addicted, the poor, the bedraggled, the undocumented, the unloved, the unlovely. Even they sense the rightness in it when you treat them with respect, as God intends us to treat each other. The rules are written deep within us, and sometimes we forget. We don't even know how far short we're falling of these rules until someone unexpectedly follows them. And then we're like, oh yeah, that's what's right. That's the other way of being. That's how we're supposed to be. You know, I think this is why nonviolence worked so effectively, at least for the first part of the civil rights movement. When people do not resort to violence, when they refuse to be their worst selves, it holds a mirror up to their tormentor's face and says, look at you. Is this who you want to be? It touches the conscience. Because we all know that we're not supposed to be this way. We all know that it's supposed to be better than this. These healing stories in the Gospels appear a little, trite, maybe meaningless at first glance, but each of them is a little bit different, and each of them has a slightly different meaning. And they only offer their riches to those who will ponder them and reflect on them in a way that we don't often do. This one, about the woman who did not seek healing from her unusual ailment of not being able to look people in the eye. This one is very unique, and it gives us quite a lot to take home today. First, I find in this text a God who seeks us out when we don't have the good sense to seek God. I find in this text a God who seeks our well-being when we don't even look for it sometimes, when we don't even ask. We don't always go looking for God's strength and help. Sometimes it comes looking for us. Are there such areas in your life? Second, Christ's self-appointed task is to call the outsider back in, to help the one who is bent over to stand up straight and to look their fellows in the eye. This tells us that we too are called to walk through this world with our heads held high, expecting to be treated with respect and respecting others in the same way. Ours is the task of honoring the outsider so that they too may hold their heads up high. Thirdly, it occurs to me that if you and I are often stooped like this, it's because we're holding our cell phones. It's because something so dazzling and so full and so busy and so full of possibilities has taken us away from the person sitting beside us, from the people sitting around us. And just 18 years ago, we didn't have them. There's so little in contemporary life that brings us together in person. We've gotten used to our social alienation, but it's not good for us. Our mission today as the church must be to combat loneliness and create community. When you're stooped over like this poor woman was, you see so little of life. You never see the big picture. All you see is the dirt at your feet. You see your own next step. We live with these stooped hearts, these stooped worlds. There's beauty and possibility that we fail to see because we've gotten used to not seeing it. We don't lift our face toward it, all that is good and possible and right. Our perspective isn't whole, but we forget that it isn't whole. We begin to believe over time that our perspective is just fine. I see it all right here in front of me. We resign ourselves to unhealth, forgetting that it is unhealth. But the God that we know in the person of Jesus sees the sickness that we no longer see and beckons us to be healed. What have you as an individual, or we as a society, gotten used to, but which requires healing? How are we as a congregation calling the outsider in? And let us go back to choosing community over isolation. You can get used to almost anything, but let's not do that. Let's stand up straight, take a good look around us, and live lives worthy of that broader perspective. Amen.